The final road game of the regular season takes us to LA. After a rough loss to the Raiders, Denver can still finish with a winning record this year, but they'll need a season sweep of the Chargers to do it. We'll take a look at Drew Lock and what this game means for his progress, why Denver's defense has been very good against the Chargers of late, and did Steve Atwater's best interception come against the Chargers? We'll look back on a long history between these two teams. Welcome into Broncos Weekend, everybody. I'm Matt Boyer alongside Alexis Perry and the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater. Guys, the Broncos' playoff chances at this point, less than a percentage point, but there's still a lot to play for. A winning season is on the line. Jobs are on the line. And for some players, these next two games are a chance, or a barometer rather, for what they've learned so far this year. One of those players is Drew Lock, as we take a look at the quarterback matchup. Drew Lock, the expected starter in this one, and Justin Herbert, AP. Lock only threw for 155 yards last week. And the offense wasn't explosive in the passing game, which had plenty of Broncos fans up in arms, but he didn't turn it over, and our friends at PFF had him as the third best QB in terms of QB grade. So, how should we feel about his performance last week, and what to expect in his start this week?
Yeah, I think when we're assessing his first start, I think it's safe to say that he just simply wasn't the problem for this Broncos offense in Las Vegas. Without any semblance of a run game, it's really difficult to evaluate his performance, but I think he did an adequate job executing what he was expected to do. The biggest area of concern, obviously, for Drew and this Broncos offense was on third downs. Converting just 1 of 10 third downs, you're not going to win really any game that way. So some of that is on Lock, some of that's on play calling, some of that's on the route running, and some of it's on the offensive line, who had Lock under pressure on 52% of his dropbacks. Then you look at the second half. 3 possessions, just 12 offensive plays. Again, Lock shares some of that blame, but you also have to blame a little bit of the defense as well, who just couldn't get Josh Jacobs off the field. So I think if Drew plays in these final 2 weeks, I think we'll see a little bit more of an expanded playbook. I think he'll be a little bit more comfortable, and he just needs to do exactly what he did last week, a mistake-free game. I love seeing that. I mentioned that on the show here last week. I just wanted to see a clean game from him. He gave us that. So I think maybe we'll just give him a little bit more of a thorough evaluation after 2 or 3 games as the starter.
Said in his press conference this week he was very happy with the way he took care of the ball. Steve, on the
I thought he did a good job too.
Well, yeah, I think so, but you know, you got to connect on some of those deep shots, and hopefully they'll do a little bit more of that. Speaking of deep shots, Steve, a guy who loves to air it out is Justin Herbert. Herbert's season, it's been interesting because there have been some high highs, and then there have been some major frustrations. He threw for 300 yards against Denver last time, and he threw for 300 yards against the Texans last week, but both of those were losses, and he had a pick 6 in each game. So, in thinking about Justin Herbert, what, if anything, can Denver take away from the tape in these last couple of games I just mentioned to help create more turnovers this week?
Well, we know that he's a talented quarterback. He's second in the NFL in passing yards, only behind the great Tom Brady. He's 4th in passing touchdowns. So the guy has a lot of skills, but he's also second in the NFL with interceptions. So that means he does do some things incorrectly too. He's thrown some high passes. He's overthrown some guys. Went back and looked at that Houston Texans game and our previous game against them. And you know, the one thing that both defenses did in common on those pick sixes, the pick 6 with Pat Surtain, we were kind of in a cover 2 shell.
Yep.
And the pass, again, a little bit overthrown, a little bit high for Austin Ekeler, and he tipped it. Surtain was able to run it in. Hopefully that same thing will happen. I like the 4-man rush, 2-man shell, cover 2 deep shell coverage to, confuse them a little bit in the coverages. I think we'll try to continue to do that same thing this week.
It does seem like Justin Herbert just tends to struggle against these Vic Fangio defenses. So I'm
yes, right.
I'm feeling a good week this week.
Well,
for this defense.
against AFC West opponents, AP, Denver's only opponent where Herbert's quarterback rating drops below 100.
Denver.
It's the Denver Broncos. They've also sacked him more than any team in his career, 7. So whatever Denver's doing
he
recently.
struggles under pressure. He does.
Whatever they're doing recently, it has been working, but we know the offense can score in a hurry as we look at the wide receivers in this game. Jerry Jeudy and Keenan Allen, AP. Jeudy was Denver's leading wideout last week in Vegas with the most yards, 60. 40 of those yards, though, came off of 1 catch. So last time Denver played in LA, he had a career-high 15 targets. kind of feeling like we might see a little bit more of that here with Jerry Jeudy this week. How do you think Denver could look to get him the ball, give him some more momentum to finish the year strong?
Yeah, I hope we see something like that this week because everyone should want to see Jerry Jeudy get a ton of targets and have a ton of production, especially to springboard heading into his third season. Judy's career with the Broncos has really been a roller coaster of sorts. We all know that he had a ton of chemistry there with Drew Lock last season. Then Lock lost the starting job to Teddy Bridgewater. He was gaining some chemistry with Teddy Bridgewater, but then he got hurt, then he came back, and now he's just kind of been lost in the mix a little bit. So at some point, all of these factors changed from reasons to excuses, and I think there's pressure on both sides of this. The Broncos, they need to prove that they made the right decision in using their 15th overall pick on Jerry Jeudy, and Jerry Jeudy, he wants to prove that he was worthy of that 15th overall pick and that he's worthy of a big second contract like all these young guys hope to get. So I just think, especially if Lock is in this week, it's really important for Drew to get Jerry Jeudy the ball because the more catches he can make this week and the final week, obviously, against the Chiefs, that will give him the confidence that he needs to really head into this offseason on a personal high note.
But I also think that when he gets the ball to Jerry Jeudy, it also opens up Noah Fant. It also opens up Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick. The cascade effect is great with that.
And the running game as well. So, it all correlates. So it's definitely important to get Jerry Jeudy the ball this week.
Well, Justin Herbert is going to also be looking to get Keenan Allen the ball.
Oh boy.
And he did it to effect last time these two teams played. Allen had a big day, 10 targets, no TDs though, Steve. So he's got 7 touchdowns in his career against Denver. That's more than any other team he's played. So that's not
licking his chops.
Why is he saying this? Why are you telling us this?
How do you defend against him is basically what I'm trying to get at. We don't know what Ronald Darby's status will be for this week. Do you put Pat Surtain on him? Do you give him more zone looks? You just mentioned that kind of cover 2 shell look. What do you throw at this guy to make sure he's covered?
Well, the first point I want to make is Keenan Allen is a dog on the field. He has that mentality like, if you don't come up and challenge him and make him feel your presence, he's going to take advantage of you. And you got to have a strong-minded player, of strong-minded corners. And most corners have that type of mentality, but some, they'll get rattled if he makes a couple catches on you and starts, talking noise and spinning the ball and all that good stuff. So I think for Keenan Allen, you got to put Pat Surtain on him. You got to have a guy that can challenge him, who has the right mentality. And Bryce Callahan, although he's outsized by Mike Williams, last year he had a nice interception in the end zone while covering Mike Williams. But I think Keenan Allen is their most deadly weapon, especially if Justin Herbert is looking to go to him. And for my bet, I'm putting Pat Surtain on him.
Allen might get some help this week. Jalen Guyton coming off the COVID list. Mike Williams, we thought he was going to be missing with this one. NFL changes the COVID rules. Now it's possible that Mike Williams could be back.
Crazy.
So Allen, Guyton, and Williams could all be on the field for the Chargers when Sunday kicks off.
But Tim Patrick won't be for the Broncos.
Tim Patrick will not be for the Broncos. Again, a byproduct of these new COVID rules that unfortunately not going the Broncos' way right now. Okay, let's look at the defense now, guys. Joey Bosa and Shelby Harris as we look at 2 of the big factors on defense in this Week 17 matchup. AP, Shelby had a very solid performance in Vegas, but maybe more than that, gave a passionate statement to the media after the game about being a pro, what it means for the final 2 games of the season, based on what he did on the field last week and what he said off of it. How fired up do you think this front 4 is going to be playing in LA this week? Well,
of all people, Shelby Harris knows what it means to be a pro. He's extremely appreciative of the opportunity to make a living playing professional football. He was a 7th rounder that was cut 6 times before he finally landed a steady job here with the Broncos. And he's a guy that has never, and I don't think he ever will, take a single snap for granted, playoff bound or not. So I think that kind of professionalism really spreads throughout a locker room and especially throughout his fellow defensive linemen. So if you're playing next to or behind a player like that, I think it's human nature to want to play at that same level. And on top of that, all of these guys just have pride. You don't make it in the NFL if you don't take pride in beating the guy across from you. So I think, especially coming off the game like they are Sunday against the Raiders, these guys, they want to come out. They want to have a huge game, especially up against Austin Ekeler and the Chargers run game. So I think we're going to see a really good game from the entire defensive line. And I don't think these guys are going to take their foot off the gas just because it seems like their playoff hopes are pretty much diminished.
Hey, they're playing for jobs, too.
They are playing for the jobs.
Harris didn't play in that first game against the Chargers, but the ability to get home for this team with 4, Jones, Purcell, Harris, all of these guys, major factors in making huge contributions here down the stretch. Steve, looking at that Chargers defense, this unit's been a revolving door because of injuries, COVID protocols we just mentioned. Joey Bosa wound up on the COVID list last week, activated this week. He only had 1 sack the last time these two teams played, and Denver didn't give him many opportunities because they ran the ball so often. So do you expect Denver, same plan this week, run the ball, or do you think that they maybe throw a couple of wrinkles in here to keep Joey Bosa at bay?
Well, I'll tell you what, we didn't have much productivity from the offense this last game in terms of the run game. 16 rushes, only 18 yards. That's a disappointment. Count on it. They're getting back to the run game. The last game against the Chargers was 33 rushes, 147 yards. Same basic team. We think we can do it again. Let's pound the ball. Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, let's get it going.
Because Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, those are dogs.
That's right.
Here we go. We got to take a quick break when we come back on Broncos Weekend. Manning's major comeback and Steve Atwater's only pick 6. So many great moments have been made between these two teams on the road, and we'll take you through the history between the Chargers and the Broncos next. Whether they are located in Los Angeles or San Diego, the Chargers have historically been a tough test for the Broncos on the road, with the Bolts holding a 34-26 advantage. Denver's first road win against their SoCal rivals came in 1962. That year, Denver erased a 13-point Chargers lead in the second half thanks to a pair of Donnie Stone touchdowns. The final score coming off a beautifully timed pass from Frank Tripucka as Denver edged the Chargers 23-20. Speaking of second-half comebacks,
throws. He wants Thomas. Thomas is there. Touchdown, Denver.
Despite trailing 24-0 at the half in San Diego on Monday Night Football, Peyton Manning helped lead a furious comeback in 2012, throwing 3 second-half touchdown passes, including the go-ahead score to Brandon Stokely.
He sits. He throws. He wants Stokely in the corner of the end zone. Stokely goes up, makes the catch. Touchdown, Denver!
Denver sealed the Chargers' fate with a Chris Harris Jr. pick 6 as the Broncos tied a franchise record for largest comeback victory, marching home with a 35-24 win. In more recent meetings, Denver has taken 2 of the last 3 contests played in Los Angeles. In 2018, Phillip Lindsay's 2 touchdowns helped Denver keep pace, and Courtland Sutton's 30-yard reception with time winding down put Brandon McManus in position to win the game 23-22 as time expired. And in 2019,
throws wide open receiver Sutton at the 45. He pulls away. Sutton down the sideline. 30, 25, 20. Foot race to the goal line. Touchdown, Denver!
Courtland Sutton's 70-yard touchdown sprint helped put Denver on an unbeatable path, with Alexander Johnson's end zone interception also highlighting another big day for the Denver defense as the Broncos bounced home with a 20-13 win. Kareem Jackson, Courtland Sutton, Brandon McManus, all of these current Broncos have had major success on the road against the Chargers. Welcome back into Broncos Weekend, everybody. Speaking of being effective against the Chargers, Steve, this might have been one of the best teams, or this might have been the team that you took advantage of the most in your career. Yes, listen, 5 interceptions, 2 sacks against the Chargers, and the only pick 6 of your career on the road against the Chargers in San Diego. What do you remember about that play?
First off, thanks for mentioning it.
Okay.
I don't like that stat, really. Only 1 pick 6 out of all the years that I played. But, yeah, I was certainly happy to get that pick 6. I was like, man, it's been a long time coming. And, you know, I remember all my teammates coming in. We were all in the end zone celebrating. I was like, man, it's finally.
You had 13 wins against the Chargers in your career, Steve. I mean, did you enjoy playing the Chargers?
Sometimes, but they also had some pretty good backs over the years, and I used to have to take some Advil before some of the games, knowing there was gonna be some helmet-to-helmet contact, and we can't do that nowadays. But yeah, I remember a great battle. I had some great friends on that team too. The late Junior Seau was one of my good friends. So yeah, good memories over the years.
Steve, we mentioned in the first block here the possibility of the playoffs for the Broncos, less than a percentage, depending on what statistics website you follow. When teams get into this mode in the playoffs, you know, they seem, you know, in the distance. What are the conversations like in the locker room? What type of mentality does this Broncos team need to have these last 2 games in thinking about the future?
Well, first off, not only are they playing because they still have a slight chance to make the playoffs. You can never forget about that.
Yep.
But in the NFL, you're always playing for a job. There's never a time when you can go out on the field and think you're just out there. The coaches are watching, the GM is watching, the fans are watching, and if you don't give it your all, guess what? A fan sees you in the store, they're like, come on, man, you didn't give your all, Or the GM, has an opportunity to trade you to someone else because he remembers that play. Guys got to go out and give it their all regardless of the situation, and I think that's the attitude and that's the type of character guys that we have on this team. They're going to give it their all to the end.
Justin Simmons mentioned it, having a winning record. That is meaningful when you're trying to grow a culture, when you're trying to grow a foundation here as we move into the future. These next 2 games, very important for the Denver Broncos. We've got to take a quick break, but when we come back on Broncos Weekend, Denver's offense is looking for a statement performance. So what needs to happen for Drew Lock and company to bounce back in a big way? Alexis is chatting with Zach Stevens from DNVR after the break. Welcome back to Broncos Weekend, everybody. How much of Denver's success this week is tied to defending the run? And what could a winning record this year mean for the future of this franchise? Well, Alexis Perry is back now to get some answers from the DNVR's Zach Stevens.
Thanks so much, Matt. Zach, Drew Lock in his first start of the season, he wasn't the problem for this Broncos offense, but he wasn't the solution either. So what factors played into such an anemic performance by this Broncos offense against the Raiders, and how do they make those adjustments by this Sunday against the Chargers?
Yeah, Alexis, Drew was good. He was probably the best offensive player for the Broncos, right. And he was just efficient, not anything better than that. Right. And so the Broncos offense, everyone needs to be better, including Drew. But what Drew needs to do in this next start is he needs to just continue to not turn the ball over. And then the offensive line needs to play better for the running game and for Drew. That was a huge issue against the Raiders. Drew was always having pressure in his face, and then the running backs were being hit 1 or 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So it starts up front for the Broncos offense, and then it goes out because the wide receivers dropped the ball. Pretty much every single player Drew threw the ball to had a dropped pass, so everyone can do better this week to make it not an anemic performance again.
Well, like we all know, the Chargers all season long, they have struggled up against the run. You mentioned the Broncos run game last week against the Raiders. So do you feel like this week, this could be a big bounce back week for that offensive line, as well as Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams?
It has to be. It has to be. I mean, Melvin last week, 7 rushes, -4 yards. He's never had a game like that, so it's going to be a better game for everyone. But you look at the 4 games before that Raiders game after the bye, including the one against the Chargers, the Broncos rushed for 155 yards per game in that stretch. And then they did what they did last week. So you have to imagine that it's going to bounce back to more so the 155 yards. And on top of that, Broncos got Lloyd Cushenberry back this week, which is huge because a new center can change everything, and it really hurt them last week.
Well, speaking of Denver's defense, the defensive line, obviously, they had their worst performance up against the run last week against the Raiders. Austin Ekeler, it seems like he will be back in this game. This will be the first time I think we see him this year. Yeah. So what kind of threat does he pose, and how does Denver contain him and really bounce back from a rough performance last week?
Yeah, big threat because Josh Jacobs last week tore the Broncos apart on the ground. And then Austin Ekeler, he provides not only the ground experience, but he's really good out of the backfield catching the ball as well. So that's going to be on the linebackers, Baron Browning, and Jonas Griffith, who's played really well to contain him in the pass game because he's someone that can slice and dice any defense. And the Broncos secondary did well against Justin Herbert the last time they played, so it's going to be up to the front 7 to keep everything else in check.
Well, speaking of Justin Herbert, he has struggled kind of historically in his 2 years, obviously, up against this Vic Fangio defense. So what adjustments could you see the Chargers making this week as they approach this game to, try to keep their AFC playoff hopes alive?
Looking the opposite direction of Pat Surtain. Pat Surtain had the best game of his career the last time the Broncos played the Chargers when he picked them off not once, but twice, including a pick 6. And if he looks Pat Surtain's way again, it's going to be risky. At the beginning of the game, the last time they played, he threw to Pat Surtain's side the very first pass of the game. And I said, that's risky doing that. I doubt he does that again this week.
Okay, like we all know, the Denver Broncos, they need a win this Sunday. an effort to maybe not have a losing record for the 5th straight year. So how critical is it for this team to go into SoFi, get a statement win, even if their playoff hopes are, minute?
0.1%.
0.1%, that's pretty
is
brutal.
what their playoff odds are right now. It's key, especially for Vic Fangio, who's fighting for his job right now. He knows that. And the Broncos haven't had a winning season since 2016.
Yeah.
This would be their 5th straight losing season, and they can guarantee that with a loss this week. So it's huge for everyone. So many of these Broncos players who you think would have seen a winning season by now still haven't. So it would be huge for the team going forward.
All right, Zach, are you going to be making the trip to SoFi?
I will not be. I'll be
Okay.
here for the new year.
On the couch, same here. Okay, Zach, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, be sure to follow him on Twitter at Zach Stevens DNVR. Matt, let's send it back to you.
Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Zach. Okay, Steve, the Broncos, they've struggled in the division in the last couple of years, except when it comes to the Chargers. This could be the 2nd time in 3 seasons they sweep the Chargers. So how are they getting it done? Your keys.
Well, first key, only key, Drew Lock.
Okay.
Drew Lock has the ball. Now, obviously, it takes the offensive line doing a great job, but I want Drew Lock to go out there and take over this game, show the team and the state of Colorado why he was picked in the 2nd round. There was so much high hopes for him. And he's got to know, too, that the Chargers are going back, looking at film from last year, looking at this previous game. He's going to have to be on his P's and Q's. Take what he learned from Teddy Bridgewater when he was in there, get the short pass in, and then take your shots. Don't start off with the deep shots, start off with the short ones.
3rd down efficiency for me, Steve. Denver, 1 of 10 last week on 3rd down. We heard from AP earlier. But LA, dead last in the league on 3rd down. Teams are converting at 51.1%. So if Denver can hold the Chargers on offense like they've done in previous meetings and get some conversions, get some momentum on 3rd down, I think they get to the red zone. I think they can push it in. What do you think?
How do we get the conversions? Are we running or are we passing?
We're throwing it. Drew Lock. You just said it. Drew Lock getting the conversions.
I like it.
There we go. That'll do it for us this week on Broncos Weekend, everybody. Special thanks to the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater. I'm Matt Boyer. So long, Broncos country. We'll see you next week.